Okay, welcome back. This is Chapter 12. Chapter 12 is all about statistics. Now, I know statistics is a scary thing, particularly if you've not taken a statistics course before. Some of these concepts may be, right over your head. But just like the finance chapter previously, we're not going to go into details of how to mechanically do all that because there's not much merit in learning the mechanics. So we are going to talk about statistical terms and a few things like that, and then we're going to go into demo things, but I'm going to concentrate on making sure that you know what tool in the toolbox should be used under what circumstances. Okay, so let's begin. Learning objectives on page 605, just like always. It says, understand the language of statistics. Yeah, you're going to need to know some of the terms. Understand the basic types of data. That's okay. Conduct a basic statistical analysis. Yep, we're going to do that. Generate descriptive statistics and other types using the analysis tool pack. Yep, we're going to do that. Predict business outcomes using probability distribution. Well, we're going to talk about it. Well, I might do one or two, but I'm not going to get into the weeds. Find relationships using covariance and correlation. Yep. Determine multiple relationships and using regression analysis. Okay, so that's what this is all about. Now, before we even get started into firing up Excel, I really have to go off on a rant, and I'll admit this is a rant, but just bear with me. Let's talk about statistics in the big picture. So, statistics is hard, okay? You're taking a complex thing and you're boiling it down to a number. And so whenever you take this much data and you scrunch it down to that much data, like a compression algorithm, right? You take an image and you compress it and compress it and compress it and compress it, and it gets this small, you're going to lose some information, aren't you? I mean, that actually is the whole point of statistics, is to be able to reduce complex things to something that people can understand. The problem is people don't understand it. So it's often misused. Now, the media is perfect. I've seen newscaster, spout statistics that, makes my eyes roll, go, oh, God, did you really say that? Sometimes the deception is on purpose. I would imagine it's not, because people are just not good at statistics, and most likely it's just genuinely they don't understand. And there are some brilliant people out there. For example, one of the examples that we're going to talk about is, I'm a researcher and I'm studying the link between autism and vaccine. This is a brilliant man, okay? He's not a lightweight. He's a medical researcher, guy that has an MD and does all that stuff, and yet he did not understand statistics. Okay. So, let me give you some goofy examples, and I just want you to think about this a minute. All right. If there was a statistic, by the way, I made this up, 90% of all shark attacks occur within 200 yards of the shore. And you think, oh, wow, that's horrible. Maybe I ought to not go swimming. Well, no, that's not the message. Think about it. Where are the people? Well, the people are going to be within 200 yards of the shore. So the fact that there's shark attacks on humans means that I shouldn't I should, go further out in order to, if I went out to 300 yards, I'd be safer? No, that's not at all what that means. What that means is 90% of the people are within 200 yards of the shore. So don't misuse statistics to try to tell somebody, oh, well, if you swim out further, you'll be safer. Like, no, that's not what that means. And this next one, I think it was President Truman, okay? Or it might have been Eisenhower. I don't remember. I saw the quote, and it was absolutely stunning. It said, 50% of school-age children have below average IQ. And he went, oh, man, we got to do something. It's like, no. 50% are going to be below the average, and 50% are going to be above the average every single time, right? Okay, so don't make this alarmist statement. Oh my God, 50% of the children are below average. Well, yeah, 50% are below and 50% are above. What's the big deal? There are some appropriate usage, and we're going to talk about these terms. You don't see, for example, when you're going into like a real estate listing, you don't see average price. You see median price. And we'll explain those terms. But essentially, let's just pretend like you had a town that was maybe like the railroad track went down the middle of it. And over here, the average house price was $100,000. And then on the other side of the track, the average house price was, say, $400,000. Or let's make the math easier. $300,000. So you have $100,000 over here and $300,000 over here. So the average house price is $200,000. So you go to the real estate person and say, "I'd like to see one of those $200,000 homes." They go, "Oh, we don't have any." It's like, "What do you mean? That's the average price." You go, "Well, yeah, it's the average, but there aren't any. I mean, we have a bunch of them over here that are 100, a bunch over here that are 300, but we don't have any in the 200 range." See? And there's other times when the statistics, it's appropriate use, but you're missing a key piece of the puzzle. For example, now this is just a made-up one. So let's say that somebody came out and said, drinking 2 cups of coffee per day is going to increase your risk of toenail cancer by 20%. Now, what's the missing piece? Well, the missing piece would be, what was my risk before? If my risk before was 1 in 10 million, well, then a 20% increase in risk is be like, okay, I'm going to continue to drink coffee. So you're missing some information, aren't you? 20% increase in risk, fine, but what was my risk before? I can't use this to make a decision. Okay, the next one is a big one, and this is the whole thing of correlation versus causation. If you were to light that up and put it in Google, you'd find hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of pages on people who get admonished over and over and over for not understanding how statistics works. So, for example, back in, I don't know, the 70s, somebody did a study to determine that there was a very strong correlation between women's skirt length and stock market prices. Okay? And it's there. I mean, every time the stock market dipped and went back up, the skirt lengths, mini skirts and maxi skirts and all these things, it was a very tight correlation. Does anyone think that the stock market caused the skirt lengths to change? No. Does anyone think that the skirt lengths made the stock market change? No. In other words, one did not cause the other. Just because there is a correlation does not mean that one caused the other. Okay. The other one, of course, is the story of the autism and vaccination. The guy has some good results that detection of autism in children occurred about the same time as they got their first vaccinations. And there's a strong correlation there. So he leapt to the conclusion that one caused the other. And unfortunately, that's just not true. Yes, there is a correlation. Got it. But did one cause the other? No. Okay. Whew. So the bottom line is, there really needs to be like an honor code when we're using statistics. Some sort of rule of ethics that say, I'm going to apply statistic to this, but I'm going to make dang sure that I'm not misappropriating the information, not leaving out information, providing everything that, in other words, now that you boiled it down, you're giving someone enough information to make a decision on whether or not they're going to continue to drink coffee or not, or whether or not they're going to have their kids vaccinated. This is incredibly powerful stuff. It's a very powerful tool that people wield somewhat indiscriminately, and people get into trouble big time. Okay, I'm finished with my rant. Now we can get back to doing Microsoft Excel stuff. Okay. Whew. All right. The first thing on page 606, they talk about the terms. And just kind of follow along on the terms here, because you're going to need to know some of these things. And again, I'm not talking about into the weeds. I'm talking about what it does for a living, okay? So descriptive statistics. That's essentially the kind of things where I'm trying to get information from data. I've got tons and tons of data, and I'm trying to extract some information. Remember the difference between data and information? So descriptive statistics, things like, what is the mean? What is the average? What is the mode? That kind of stuff. So I'm pulling information from data. Inferential statistics is the statistics of trying to determine what the future will be. For example, I have like a time series of data, and then I want to predict what's it going to be like next year. So that's inferring, inferential statistics. Probability is all about trying to figure out the likelihood something is going to occur, either is or isn't. You know what? Usually it's in percent. You know, like a 20% chance of rain, that kind of stuff. You know, the probability of rain is 20%. Then they go into thing about data, and we already know what data is. Data is just, you know, facts, figures, whatever. Again, perhaps not with a lot of smarts onto it. And then they talk about a data set. Well, a data set is just a group of related data. Okay, that's nothing fancy. And hopefully they're all somehow related. I mean, you know, you wouldn't want to have shoe size and age and IQ and lump them all together because you wouldn't be able to figure out what was what. You know, it has to be groups of data. Okay. The next one talks about the population. And in statistics, we're not talking about people. Okay, in statistics, we're talking about the observable set of data. Okay, that's kind of a weird term. And there's two things you can do. One is what's called the big universe of population. That's everything. In other words, that's all the kumquats in the world. I'm trying to find out what the average size of a kumquat is. So the universe is every single kumquat everywhere. The sample population is some subset that I've pulled so I can measure the size of a kumquat. So it's not every kumquat on the entire planet. It's just the ones that I'm currently looking at. And there's random sampling, which is the same thing as you know, sample population. It's just a different technique where I'm randomly pulling things rather than going to a single grocery store and pulling kumquats. Okay. The next term they talk about is probability distribution. And that sounds complex, but basically what it really means is what are all the possible outcomes? So if I had, you know, you're playing dice, okay, and you throw one of these guys, one of the die, I hate using the singular because that sounds stupid. So what are the possible outcomes? Well, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's the universe of possible outcomes, okay? So the probability distribution. The next one they talk about is discrete variable. A discrete variable is where I already know what the upper and lower bounds are for these things. It's not like, for example, age, okay? The age of a human. I don't need to consider a negative number, and I don't need to consider like beyond around, you know, 125, 140. Okay, I just made that number up. So I know that there's a discrete range of acceptable values. So I don't have to worry about, you know, somebody coming in who's, you know, -4 years old or is 400 years old. A continuous variable is the exact opposite. That is, I have no idea what the values are going to be. They could be outrageously. It could be infinite. Or it could be such a wide variety that I just don't have a clue. So the difference between the discrete variable where all possible values are known and a continuous variable where I really don't know. On page 607, they talk about the types of data, and there's a couple terms in here you're going to have to know because later on we're going to use them. And the first one's called nominal data. Nominal data is where you assign a number to something and it's completely arbitrary. So for example, later on we're going to assign the number 1 to a male person and number 2 to a female person. It could have been 14 and 42. In other words, the number itself is not relevant. It doesn't matter what number you picked as long as you're consistent. Okay, so that's nominal data. Nominal data means, yeah, it's a number, but what's the significance of a 1? None, other than it's associated with something. Okay, this is probably a good place to stop for the 15-minute mark. We'll continue in just a second.